Hi, I'm Rashawn Gidwani, the presenter for PYTCH Media. On this episode of Teatime Tuesday, I hope to calm your nerves about what it takes to buy your first house in Singapore. It can be a daunting task, but not if you know who to talk to and what you want. So let's begin. Today, I'm with Halim Hamid, real estate salesperson from ERA. Thanks for joining us on the program. How are you?
Thank you, Roshan. I'm good, thank you.
Absolutely, fantastic. Now, Halim, let's dive right in. What is the ERA Realty Network? Tell us a bit about what you do.
Okay, basically I assist buyers and homeowners to buy and sell their properties, and also advise investors on their investment journey in property as well.
I'm looking to buy my first house in Singapore, my first home. I'm not sure what I should get.
Okay.
And that's why I'm so privileged to be able to talk to you today, because it can be quite stressful.
Yes,
right?
I
I'm not
understand
sure
that.
where to start, but I'm so glad that I have this job, I have this opportunity to talk to you, right?
Right,
in this setting. So let's talk about it.
All right.
What should I think about when I'm thinking about buying my first house, before I even decide whether it's an EC or an HDB?
Okay, first and foremost, you need to decide with your partner or your spouse if you're buying as a partner, it's a joint tenancy. So you need to have a first 5-year plan upon receiving the keys to your first house. Is it for investment? Is it to be near your parents, or maybe to be near your future kids' school, or even your workplace to commute with? So it can be either. So the common ways will be generally people who are living in HDB. Generally, they will buy to be near their parents because they need the family support. In the first 5 years, probably they will have 1 or 2 child, so they need someone to look after the child. So that will be the normal pathways for the young couples. If you look at it from investment point of view, you shouldn't put too much emotional on it, and you should just look at the future capital gains or even the rental yields of the property.
So from what I'm hearing, it comes down to long-term planning and those 3 keywords, right? Location, location, location.
Yeah.
From your experience, it seems like you're quite good then at profiling a personality. So my eligibility personally stands at the fact that I now have my first full-time job.
Okay,
it's been a year.
All right.
So I don't have $1 million, $2 million in the bank account to buy a 2-bedroom, I'm guessing for around 1.5 million, right? Or an HDB, maybe at around $500,000 to $700,000. So I would need a loan, right?
Yes.
How do you advise clients, profiles like me, on what loan to get? A bank loan versus a HDB loan?
Okay, all right. In the current market context, my first advice would be, before you even think of buying a property, you should have at least a certain amount of savings. Because as a first property, either you buy a new BTO or new launch, or even resale, I believe there's some level of renovation needs to be done. And there's also some amount of deposits that you need to make. So if you have a certain amount of savings that you can use for the deposit or renovation, then you actually have an advantage to get the preferred unit that you want. So apart from that, based on your income, you can get a certain amount of loan. So after work out your loan through the banker or maybe from HDB, and then from there you can work out what kind of properties that suits you.
Okay, yeah. That's interesting. What kind of property suits you? When I first moved back to Singapore, I was living in China. I grew up in Australia.
All right.
Like I told you before we started this interview, I was born in Thailand. We lived in a HDB, and then we moved to another HDB. And then last year, my parents bought their first grounded property, their first
private property.
Right. There you go, private property. So I was then privy to all these different types of not statements, but stamp duties, down payments, all those types of things. So say I'm speaking on behalf of somebody who wants to buy an HDB in Singapore. You mentioned savings, right? On top of savings and on top of getting your loan and then, paying the bank the interest rates and all these different types of things, can you give me a ballpark figure of how much then I would need if I wanted to buy an HDB, inclusive of the stamp duties, the down payment ratios?
So a part of the personal cash saving that you have, You also need, for HDB wise, you also need at least 20% of CPF, but that can be paid by cash as well. But it's good to have at least a certain amount of at least 20%. But usually that is not really a problem, because for first-time buyers of HDB, they will be assisted with grants. So there's a lot of grants that you can get as a first-timer, proximity grant, first-timer grant, and all that. So that should cover your 20%, and the rest of the 80% will be covered by HLE if your income allows it.
Okay, so speaking of you, you've definitely got all the advice that I need, right? You know everything, so you're the perfect person to speak to. What else can you tell me? What other words of advice can you give me when it comes to buying my first house in Singapore?
Okay, if you are lucky enough to get a BTO or an EC new launch, then you are among the rare ones, the lucky ones to get. But if you are going to resale, my first advice is that I'm not trying to be biased, but my first advice is to get a real estate agent to assist you.
Right.
Yeah, because you can prepare all the cash that you have, and you can set your sights on certain areas that you want to buy. But a real estate salesperson does this on a daily basis, so they can advise you better. They can actually channel you towards the right direction, based on your wants and needs, and also based on your budget as well. So in general, people when they buy a house, it's either for convenience or for investment. So okay, let's go through investment first. So in Singapore, back in the days during our parents' time, they probably buy a house and stay throughout for like 20-30 years. But in today's context, I think it's becoming a trend for HDB owners. Once they got a BTO, they're already thinking 5 years later where do you want to buy next, and at which price that they're going to sell. So it's becoming a trend now. From an investment point of view, in general, let's say you were to move 3 times, sell and buy 3 times, right? So you need to make sure that every time you sell, you gain profits from there, because okay, as a first timer, let's say assuming from a BTO to EC, usually for most BTO owners, they will earn the cash profits, and then from them they step up to EC. If they are lucky enough to get an EC new launch, they will have capital gains from there as well, and that's how it's like a stepping stone for them to move toward private property eventually. So the key is for investment point of view is not to buy the wrong property, where some couples they make a mistake where they buy a first property and they end up there, as in they couldn't sell at a profit. So if they need to sell, they sell it at a loss. For example, if you buy near your parents and your parent happen to stay in a old estate, so if you buy for convenience to be near your parents but not from investment point of view, so you can't really make much money from there. There's no capital gains from there.
So what you're saying is have a long-term plan, and there is money to be made.
Yes, in Singapore context, despite the high prices right now, there's still money to be made in property. So every cycle, for example, there's a 3 cycle in your lifetime in between houses. You can actually, it's still possible to earn in every cycle.
Okay. Even if there are foreign buyers coming into Singapore and raising the prices of properties, as a citizen, you'll still make money.
Yeah, sometimes it's not just because of the foreign buyers. Sometimes it's from the local private property owners. Like the recent cooling measures is actually to put a stop on the, I wouldn't say ridiculous, high prices of HDB, where it reaches 1 million over in a neighborhood estate. So the recent cooling measures is to put a stamp on that, to control the market movement, and to make it within affordability of the local masses. The local citizens.
So the citizens aren't so stressed and they can cope with paying their rent and their mortgage and all those.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Our government aim is still to remain HDB prices to remain affordable,
right,
for its citizens. That's why it provides grants for first timers to help them with their first purchase. Don't be afraid. Rest assured that as a first timer, you will be assisted by grants. So the government is there to help you to get your first property. If you cannot get it through the new launches or BTO, you can always go to resale. And then that's where, like I mentioned, the saving comes in handy.
Absolutely.
And it will put you in a better position to get your desired units that you want. Okay, some people they may be afraid, or they want to bypass the service of an real estate agent. just to save a few thousands, but they could end up paying a lot more, and they could overpay on the houses that they want to buy. So to get a professional advice actually saves you money. Rest assured that the real estate salesperson will guide you throughout and make sure that you have the added advantage.
Thanks for guiding this interview as well. You've added a lot of insight, which I
No worries,
didn't
no
have
worries.
here. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the
Talk
chance. Thanks
soon.
for having me.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.